Happy New Year and welcome, thrilled beyond belief, to have the lovely, the talented, the ever-popular, the fabulous, the lovely Dina Nina Martinez-Rutherford in the studio with us today. Hello, my love.
Hi, darling.
Thank you so much for coming and visiting with us today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy.
So,
Gave me a reason to get pretty.
you don't need a reason, darling. You're beautiful every day.
Stop it.
So, for those people who may not know anything about you or may not know who you are and how fabulous you really are, give us a little bit about your backstory and where you've been and where you've come from and how you got to be here today, sitting in the chair.
Well, a car. Just kidding. Let's start back. I was born in Texas. Grew up highly evangelical in a very tiny town. One might say that I'm a little too big for that town, and had always wanted to leave, but never did. And then I moved to Los Angeles. Well, I was living in Dallas for a while, and then moved to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles, I was able to kind of become who I was, and decided to start doing stand-up comedy and loved it. And now I live here. Like my best friends, two of my friends that I met in LA were from Wisconsin, and I was like, sure.
So you knew nothing about Madison, Wisconsin at all?
No. I as somebody who lived on the coast,
right?
We have a perspective about the middle of the country. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm either going to get murdered or married, like what's going to happen as a trans lady in the middle of the country. And we came here to work for the summer, and then we were going to move, even better, Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh.
Because my best friend went to grad school there. And I was like, they kill people like me, so I'm going to stay in Madison. And the rest is history.
So when you went to Los Angeles, that's when you transitioned, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about what that journey was for you to have coming from, like I say, an evangelical small town in Texas to finding your new self in LA.
Yeah, I mean, I had come out as gay a couple of times and went back in because Jesus, and I think I was just at a place where I needed to get away from my family, and the whole area that I lived in kind of reminded me of all the dumb stuff I'd done, and everywhere I turned, I just felt like it was a reminder of how I'd messed up in my life. And so I was really excited. I was writing screenplays, doing music, and ended up saying, let's do it. Moved halfway across the country, and being able to be a little freer with sexual orientation gave me the opportunity to realize that, I'm a woman. My mother finally does have a straight daughter,
Her dreams have come true.
And so I began to transition, and it was super, super scary. And I'll tell you, I was standing on the corner of Fairfax and 3rd one day, waiting for a bus to take me back to Hollywood where I lived. And it was 2017, right before I'd taken my first shot, and I was like, I talked to God for the first time in a long time, and I was like, I'm so scared. Everybody has always told me that I was wishy-washy and couldn't commit to anything, and I'm going to change my mind after I began transition. And I heard this still small voice, who knows if it's God, if I just made it up, or if it's my higher self, or what, I know. It was, the big spaghetti monster in the sky, whatever. But I had this knowing that if I didn't do it, I would be miserable for the rest of my life. And if I didn't do it, there were people in the middle of the country who would not see that they can become who they are and be happy. And I was like, okay, cool. And a lot of people say, always said, that feels like a lot of responsibility. And I was like, it didn't feel like that. It just was like, okay, cool, let's do it. And within weeks of taking my first hormone shot, I was like, oh my God, everything is starting to make sense. And it was 2007. And you think, oh, LA, 2007, the big city. It was still a hard time to transition, like my job didn't understand. I didn't fully understand. I wasn't able to get a job when I was unemployed. Like, it was just, there wasn't a place for us in media. And so that's when I found stand-up.
Now, did you have a support group of people that helped you through all the transition, or did you just say, I'm just going to do this?
Well, I worked in a restaurant, and so
okay, good.
I did have a really big support group, and it was mostly Johnny, Jack, and Jose Cuervo. Just kidding. Yeah, no, like my best friend Greg and Christine, who live here now, are from here and live here now, and people I'd worked with, it was a great support group for what it needed to be at the time, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Well,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and it just made sense. Like, yeah.
And so, did you always want to do stand-up comedy, or was it just something like you could just have an epiphany of saying, I'm funny, I'm going to get up on the stage, and I'm going to be knocking them dead?
I don't know. It was definitely, like, I was always funny. But I distinctly remember when I was in probably like junior high school or whatever, we went to this home church for a while.
Well, you really were steeped in it,
really,
weren't you?
really. I actually was in leadership in the church and all this. It's so many things. But we went to this home church, and I'd watched like Joan Rivers, which was, shocking for the day, and
sure,
Whoopi Goldberg. And I remember Whoopi's special where she came out with the towel on her head talking about and I did that too, but there was something about the art form that I was so fascinated by, but I never thought I wanted to do it. But at this home church group, one day I was like doing a stand-up routine for the kids that were there, and like there was a pool, and I was like, it's the devil's toilet. No, really not funny, but for children it was hilarious.
Sure, like, they loved it.
I killed that room, but I always thought I'm situationally funny. I can't be stand-up funny, and like people would tell me you should be a stand-up comic, and I was like, I can't. I'm situationally funny. And then one of my friends was like, you can make the situation on the stage, and I was like, whatever. And then I was like, holy cow, I wish I would have found this, so many years ago. It was amazing. There was nothing like the feeling of making people laugh, especially when you're talking about things that nobody else knew about at the time, like talking about being trans in the world, like, and having, Midwesterners come to a comedy club and hear you tell these stories, and they were just laughing and enjoying it. And I was like, those people get to fly back to their city and know something about people that they didn't know when they came here. And that made me feel,
And you probably never would have done that unless you transitioned.
Right.
Because that was the whole basis of your comedy.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. And I wanted to talk about being trans in a way that was relatable, because I still got on the bus and went to work, and I still got on the bus and went and did my grocery shopping, and I still hate my inner thighs, like I'm still pissed off about my chin,
join the club,
right?
Join the club.
And I think what I really wanted to do was like be like, I'm a human being. I hate my inner thighs like every woman in this room hates them. Like I hate wearing heels like a lot of the women in this room, like. And I think that's what made it special, not only for me, But I think that's what made me approachable as an audience member. Because I had a lot of people be like, "Oh my God, you're so funny. I don't know anybody that's trans," and thank you. Like it almost felt like preaching, in a way.
But it is.
Yeah.
It truly is. But you're doing it in a way that people don't realize you're being a preacher. But you're spreading the word. I mean, you're telling people, about who you are, but you're doing it in a funny way.
The good news.
Thank you, Jesus.
The good news of me.
So, but it was difficult finding venues in LA at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, luckily there were a lot of gay comics, and I kind of got in with them, and we just started going places, and I actually was accepted into spaces a lot more than I anticipated. I was new. Like there wasn't another trans comic in LA going to the comedy club and doing a bringer show, or going to the Burbank Flappers Club and doing comedy. So it was amazing, but it was, and I was able to get on those stages, and the comedy club, comedy store, and celebrities come in, they pop up. And so I'd be on a show with, Chris D'Elia and Sarah Colonna, who was on Chelsea Handler, Sarah Silverman, like I'd be on shows with them. And it was just like, oh, wow, this is a career.
And at that time, did you think that was going to be your next step? Did you have an eye towards being, I'm taking my stand-up career and I want to be on the road and I'm going to look for a sitcom? Yeah. Was that like the goal then? Because that was probably everybody's kind of goal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when I was doing that, way back in the 80s, everybody had their eye towards, I'm doing this, but I'm using this as my next step in.
Yeah.
And I think in now watching the people that I knew who were doing it back then, it was Jason. We talked about Jason Stewart and Ant and Sarah Silverman and even Ellen DeGeneres who was doing stand up back then. They all were like having their eye towards, okay, we're funny.
Yeah,
we know we're funny.
Right.
We just need everybody else to know we're funny, and then we need the powers that be to like put us in positions where we're going to pay us to
give
be
us
funny.
An opportunity.
Because I can't tell you how many times you're doing open mic night for nothing at 2:00 in the morning when everybody else is headlined.
Yeah.
And there are 3 people left in there, but you still had to get up there and do a show.
Yeah.
Because you never knew who one of those 3 people were.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that comics outside of LA don't understand, because comics here get paid. They get paid a little bit.
Right.
It's not a lot.
Right.
But they get something.
Yeah.
And years and years we do shows for free. We do shows where we have to bring an audience.
Bring your audience in.
And
Absolutely.
if you don't get stage time.
Yep.
You sometimes pay for stage time. Like the comics in the middle of the country have it so good in so many ways, And I think that hustle, as against free work as I am, unless it's a favor for a friend.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like if we work together and
Right.
you're like, hey, do a show. Yeah. But you can't pay your bills with with exposure. And if all you're doing every night after night is doing 2 to 3 open mics for free, doing showcases for free, because somebody might come into the audience, yeah, that's great. And that's an opportunity. And yes, there is a possibility that some producer will walk into that room and be like, yes, I want her. But the likelihood of that is very small.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's greater in LA in New York than it is here.
That's true.
But if that's all you're doing it for, it's a drain and it hurts and it makes you hate the art form. So I love the art form, and I'm so glad I was able to leave LA when I did. I did a tour with we've talked Sean Plofsky, who's one of my mentors, and my sister from another mister. We did a tour together with somebody who we really hate, which I will not say their name. But off
come
air,
on, we're all friends
we'll
here.
dish off air.
Okay, perfect. Neener, neener, neener. We've got a secret.
But I got to go on the road, and that was so exciting. And then I had been able to do some things with Sarah Silverman, and we didn't know each other real well, but I was able to kind of get on some of these things, and coming here with those kind of like I've performed with this person and this person really gave me an edge. And trying to work, especially at that time, early 10s, we weren't in the media, trans people.
Right.
We weren't normalized everywhere. And so nobody knew where to put me.
Right.
Because they have to put you on something. And I'm like, look, I'm a comedian. Just put me on a dang show.
Right.
And then it was like, oh, you're the only woman or only queer person on the show. And I was like, I don't want to work hard here to just get scraps after working so hard in LA. So I just was like, I'm going to make my own thing. And I think it's been one of the best opportunities because Liz Winstead co-created The Daily Show. And I was able to tour with her several times, and she's amazing, and we're friends, and I've had a lot of opportunities that I'm super proud of that not a lot of people would get, especially a trans person.
Well, totally. And now, so let's jump forward to what was your first big project here in Madison after you left LA, and did you come right here? You came here right from LA, right?
Yeah.
There wasn't you didn't go back to Texas and open a church for for a couple of years and then find back in Madison.
No. After I transitioned, it was done.
There you
was
go.
Good. I'd flown back out to LA a lot. The things that I, especially at the beginning, but my first thing here would be my first one-woman show, Confessions of a Wannabe Soccer Mom, that I did in 2013. Not huge, but big enough. And then being on Liz Winstead shows have really helped me. But for a while, I was flying back out and hosting a stage at LA Pride every year.
Wasn't that fun?
Oh, so much
Some of my most fun memories when it was called Christopher Street West.
Yep.
And I was emceeing on the main stage. And back then in the 80s, I mean, it was so much fun because it was the parade, which took like forever. And then it was being in that great park and having amazing people and bands and headliners and people. I had so much fun doing that. It's, it's where Leah Delaria and I were like, became buddies backstage. It's like so many people that did that. It was something I will always cherish is doing, gay pride in LA, which was so cool.
Yeah. I got to interview like, Terry Nunn from Berlin, like all these like re-emerging artists from the 80s that were doing this circuit, and I got to do radio interviews with them and Martha from the Hotels, and like it was incredible. And then going back and performing there, doing stand-up comedy. They put me on the trans stage, and it was small but mighty. And I was on the Late Late Show with James Corden because of that.
See?
Because he came on stage and we did a little bit together, and he kissed my cheek and nuzzled my neck, and I was like,
oh. See how you are.
Right.
And then, your first show, then you actually did a show with other female comedians.
Yeah, one of the first things I did was a all-woman production, local production, stand-up comedy show, and with La Bamba Waters and Vanessa Tortolano, and it was. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm welcomed into women's spaces. And then I did Chicago Women's Funny Festival, and they had me headline, and I was like, what? I'm just welcomed. And it was just, And so I started because I loved the festival in Chicago so much, and I was like, the camaraderie that you get when it's only women and queer people is different than mixed spaces because
Sure.
you're all, combating against men coming up and being like, we own this space, and just not to have that there was such a beautiful,
Sure.
magical moment space. And so I was like, let me do Lady Laughs Comedy. So we did a festival several years in a row. It's a lot of work.
I'm sure.
And now it's turned into, I teach stand-up and acting for the camera and sketch comedy and stuff. So yeah, it's turned into that. It's been great.
And now you've gone back to your initial teaching, preaching.
Yes.
And you're doing your one-person show.
Yes.
Coming up.
Yeah.
Soon to be going on tour.
Yeah.
In Madison, Milwaukee, and points thereafter.
Yes.
Tell us about what's the point of this one?
Yeah, the point of this one is because I'm still surprised that trans people are fighting just to be
alive.
Yeah,
I know.
and
Horrible.
just to be recognized
Horrible.
as human. And even at the beginning of this year, there have been an incredible amount of anti-trans bills that have already been put forth into legislatures around the country, local communities around the country, and I was like, I just want to be human on stage, and I want people to see that I'm just a nice fat lady.
Yes,
like
you
I
are.
mean, I am just nice. I still hate my inner thighs. Now I hate my neck and my bingo wings, and so I think it's to fuse which we haven't talked about politics yet, but is to fuse my passion for social justice and political engagement, democratic engagement, as well as spread the gospel of we're just humans. Like, we're all human, and can't we just be kind? And I think that we do that by telling our stories.
Mm-hmm.
We do that by explaining what our experiences are like. Like, it's hard for me to get out of bed some days, just like everybody else. I may not have children. Thank goodness, probably for the better.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a lot of the same struggles. Like, as a creative, you understand, it's hard financially to exist, and even harder now, post, what is it called? The pandemic. I was trying to block it out.
Yes,
post COVID, and we're still trying to just move through the world. And why do we have to fight for mere existence versus,
You'd think after all these years
Yeah.
and all the roller coaster
Right.
things and all the legislation that has been passed and how we got to the point of progressiveness, and then AIDS came along, and then we get past that and we come along there, and of course, then we get the orange years, which were horrific. The orange Cheeto face. That
I have
shall
no
not be
idea what
named.
you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, well, we don't want to mention his name because that's
Our very first festival was like 2 days after the election.
Oh my God! That must have been a love fest.
It might have actually been the day after the election. I can't. And it was so nice to just be able to get in a room and laugh. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, how did you come up with the name Born Loud? Because evidently you were born loud.
I was born loud. I was talking to my mother, and I was like, "Do you remember saying to me all the time that my voice carried?" And she was like, "Yes." She goes, "Your voice always carried. I knew where you were at any point in time in the day." And I was like, she goes, "Even if you were miles away." I was like, "Oh my goodness." And I remember being told, "Shh, your voice carries. Your voice carries." And I spent a lot of time being shamed about just being myself, that I think I'd kind of dimmed that for a while. And then I got around two people, my life partners, you know, my heart, the people that are my family now, you know, and they're unashamedly loud. And I just was like, okay, now I'm tuned into who I am. And so we were at this restaurant in Stevens Point, and I don't know how it came up, but I was like, I was born at this volume. And I was like, yep, that's it. I was born loud. And I was like, perfect title for the show, because if I'm doing anything, it's being visible, loud, and open about who I am, and not letting my light be dimmed by the world when it's so hard.
So how do you go about crafting a show? Because everybody has their own way of like, you know, some people will sit and they'll write, and then they'll rewrite.
Yeah.
And then they have to like get up there. Obviously, you have to get up there and do it to see if what you think is going to work and does it really work. Or do you like do it like in bits and pieces where you take something from other things and other things you've done and made bits and characters and things and kind of, you know, piece that all together and then try that out. How do you what's your process?
Well, this is definitely a storytelling show, so there's not as many characters in it. It's stories from my life. And I essentially took Confessions of a Wannabe Soccer Mom and updated it and gave it a little more focus. And so I just essentially look at the stories, figure out what highlights I want to hit, and then pop them in bullet points. Because for me, I feel like it's best when I tell it in my own natural voice, with my own...
That loud voice of yours.
What do you mean? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'll give you another anecdote in just a moment. So yeah, I mean, I take my stories, put them in a bullet point, because I want to tell it as authentically and naturally as I can within a moment. So it's going to be a little different every time. But I hit the points that are super important. You know, the moment I transitioned, the moment I knew that I was finally a woman, you know, that quinceañera, that bat mitzvah moment that trans people don't get to have, you know, the same way that cis people do. Those moments where I knew I was different as a child, you know, the moments I coped with my father passing away and what that meant for me.
How old were you when that happened?
Oh, we aren't going to say a year, but I was an adult.
Oh, so it happened when you were a child?
No, it didn't happen when I was a child,
okay.
Which I think was even more impactful on my life, if that makes sense. And,
sure.
And I kind of talk about that in the show. So yeah, I mean, it really is just a quilt of my stories.
So will you get an opportunity before you actually do the first one or take it, because Madison's first and then Milwaukee?
Milwaukee's first.
So you take it. You're doing your out of town tryout first,
right? I'm doing Milwaukee, Minneapolis, and then another Minneapolis, and then Madison.
So will you do it in front of an audience before that first time?
No, but I will say that a lot of the stories I've done already in up front of a live audience.
Okay.
They'll just be, some will be new, but they'll just be updated and tweaked a little bit. And then there'll be some newer stories, you know, from getting elected as the first openly trans, common council member in Madison, moving into politics, the pandemic, you know, the things that I learned about myself, the layers that came apart during the pandemic, what I've learned about myself, even within those last 3-5 years, you know.
So since you segued beautifully into the political portion of your life, did you ever in your wildest dreams prior to actually running for council think that you would go into politics?
Yes and no. I was kind of politically engaged in the 90s. I came out a little bit for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
One of my came out before Jesus came back around and said, "Babe, come back." And I was like, "Okay, I'll get back in a relationship with you, babe." Um, but I never really thought I'd run. And then I guess after I transitioned, seeing how important it is to be politically engaged, seeing where the world was going, it became more important. And then I think right after the Pulse nightclub shooting, I was like, I have to run. But then I talked myself out of it. And then a little bit over a year ago, I was like, yep, now it's time. I'm a comedian. I tell dirty stories for a living, you know, like dirty jokes for a living. I've had a life that is not clean. And that's who needs to be there. You know, we don't need the same people at the table. But I was talking to a friend of mine and he goes, "You told me in like 2004 or 5, some way a long time ago that you were going to run someday, but just not then." And I was like, I do not recall that. But yeah, here I am.
And how do you perceive that when you're in that room full of people? How do you perceive yourself? Do you feel like you're part of that group of people, or do you feel like you're an outsider who's kind of like made their way in, and now you've got a voice, probably the only voice, because you're the first and only that we're aware of in the council. So what does that feel like when you sit in that chamber of people?
It feels like all of that, depending on the moment. You know, sometimes I feel dumb, like I'm not, like I shouldn't be here in that space. But then other times I'm like, I have worked hard and I'm passionate and I'm smart, you know? And there are times where I feel like, yes, I belong here. And there are times where I'm like, oh, this is not a good idea. But I think if you have, unless you're a cis white straight man, you
Which
feel
there
that
are
all the
plenty
time.
of those around.
Right.
Yep.
You feel that all the time.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I feel all of it. I feel imposter complex. But I think the thing that has been the strand that goes through all of it is I am grateful. I'm grateful to have a voice at the table. And I'm honored to be representing the people that I'm representing.
Ooh, honey, there was that was a really wonderful moment. God, I love you.
It was, and I have those moments, and like sometimes I'll walk into the city hall building and I'm like, wow, what? I got them fooled. You know, like it's a little bit of all of that.
I can take the sheepskin off and the wolf will appear. And what's been the general reaction of all your peers in there? Are they all, I mean, because that's a diverse group of people in there.
Oh, yeah, indeed. I love my peers. Like, there's no one I really am like, ugh. You know, we don't agree on a lot of things.
Right.
Let me get my pipe's getting a little.
That's okay.
We don't agree on all things, but I have an incredible respect for everybody that's there, and I like them. Many of them I like hanging out with, you know? So my perspective is that I think we work well together because I work well with most everyone there, you know? I think we're accomplishing things. Like we had a budget meeting, and usually there are multiple meetings. We approved a budget in one night.
That's pretty amazing.
Right. And that, I think somebody said 8 years, maybe 18 years. I can't remember. It's been a minute since that's been done. So we don't always agree. Sometimes we argue. Sometimes it takes longer to get things done, but I think we get things done because we care about the people of Madison and we care about the city of Madison. So that's my perspective. Like, I'm glad that everybody's on the council is on the council. I love it. And we have 25% LGBTQ plus representation on the council.
That's
which is the
astonishingly
highest
great. That is great.
Of any council in the country. Chicago tried to come in and I was like, mm-mm. Also, you don't have an openly trans person on council.
There you go.
So I'm really proud. I'm proud of, I don't do everything great, and sometimes I get spread thin, but I'm proud that I'm able to be at that table. And sometimes I'm able to talk about things like I know what I'm talking about and feel confident in it. And I'm really proud of me for the work that I've done. Not to be like, I'm awesome. Because, I'm still learning and I'm still growing. There's a lot I want to figure out. I want to know. Because when it comes down to it, we still need housing for a lot of people. We still have to figure out how to feed people, how to educate children, how to feed children at schools, how to get people mental health care.
Those are big tasks.
They're huge. But I'm excited that people are at the table talking about it.
And the thing is, at least you're talking about it.
Yeah.
That's the thing that frustrates me so much about the other parts of our government, is that you have this legislature that won't even talk about it. You bring up a subject and it's like table in, table out. Nope, not going to talk about it. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Really? Is that democracy? I don't think so.
No.
It's not in any democracy that I've grew up learning.
Right.
So that's the part I'm always frustrated about. So I'm really glad to hear that in the local level, and when I was talking with Dana, talking about it on the county level, of like having voices in there that were never on those places before, and at least engaged. Like you say, I may not agree with you, we may not have the same politics, but at least we can have a discussion, and at least we can talk about, why do you feel that way? Why do you think this isn't a good idea? Or why do I think this is a great idea?
And if not this, how do we accomplish the goal?
Right.
And also, like, I think we have a really great group of county supervisors. I work with county supervisors as much as I can. We also collaborate to try to get things done for the people of Dane County and Madison. So I think that intercollaboration is really exciting to see and feel. And I wish we had, and I luckily am in a place where I'm able to collaborate and talk to people at the state level too, to see how we can influence policy that will help people in Madison. I'm grateful because I think we have a bunch of people who really care about the city and want to get things done. We don't have a state legislature experience where they're just trying to block things because they have to for their base. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Some of them don't even believe it. They're just doing it because they want to get reelected again. And I cannot live that way. Like, I'm not going to do something because it makes me money. Because I'm poor. I've been poor. I'm going to be poor again, probably. And I would rather know that I did what I felt like was right in the moment than acquiesce to people because I want to get elected. Look, I want to get elected. I love being elected. I'm honored to be where I am. But I'm going to stand true to what I believe and do everything I can to protect humans.
And that's why we love you so much.
I'm such a cheeseball. I am so aware of my cheesiness.
That's why you moved to Wisconsin.
Exactly.
You were born to be here. Born to be loud and a cheesehead.
Amen.
This has been just lovely. I just wanted to do this for so long, and you must run, not walk, to your Facebook page.
Yes.
And is there also a website where tickets will be for Milwaukee and Madison?
DinaNina.com. Everything's right on the front page. The show is Born Loud. Right now, tickets for Milwaukee, which is on the 26th of January. Mm-hmm. So just in a couple of weeks, if you're in Milwaukee or have friends in Milwaukee, make sure that they know.
And where?
To go get tickets. It's going to be at the Cooperage. It is the cutest venue, too. You're going to love it. A portion of the proceeds go to Fair Wisconsin and G-Safe to further continue their work and as an extension of the work that I do.
And where in Madison?
Madison, it's going to be at the Crucible. Amazing venue, too.
Yes, indeed.
The stage is gorgeous. And that is in March, the 29th. Once again, Minneapolis dates will be launched soon. And then I've got Oshkosh, Eau Claire, and I think Appleton coming just on the heels of that. And hopefully we'll take this national. Because I want to go to Texas and I want to go to Nashville or Tennessee and Florida and Georgia, where people that are trans are experiencing the scariest times. And I want to be there and say, look, I'm just a human. We're all humans. We're all trying to get the same thing. So if you are not in Wisconsin and you are in Wisconsin and you want me to come to your city, go to the website, email me, let me know where you want me to come, and I'll do everything I can to get there. Yes.
Just do it. Do it. Again, delightful. Thank you so much. I love you madly.
Love you more.
Thank you for joining us for our first show of the year. We will see you again soon, and stay warm and stay healthy, and we'll see you next time.